Hi. So I'm making a video because it's really hard for me to type things out with this type of thing when I'm just like putting down my words. But for this interview, I had a lot of people over for my Thanksgiving because we recently just started hosting Thanksgivings. And I didn't interview, well, I did. I did interview she's my great aunt. I call her Aunt Susie. Um, and my grandma, who knows my Aunt Susie and my great grandma very well because they're related. Um, so when I interviewed my grandma about Aunt Susie because she wasn't in the room at the time, so I asked her some questions, and I asked her like, "Hey, I don't really know much about her. What do you know about her?" And for about an not an hour. It was about an hour or 2 hours in general where I was like talking on and off to these two people. Um, and the topic of conversation that came up is why is my Aunt Susie vegan? And this is where it gets a little touchy. So content warning, eating disorders and abuse. I know. Yucky, but we're gonna get there. So, my Aunt Susie is vegan because my great grandma, I call her Grandma Great, because I used to have another great grandma, which I called her Gigi. Anyways, my great grandma used to abuse Aunt Susie because my Aunt Susie is my Grandma Great's daughter. And they don't have a very good relationship because of that, but also because of how my great grandma made Aunt Susie feel. And that was like worthless, fat, all these things. So my Aunt Susie recently became vegan along with other like diets she's tried before, because of her eating disorders. And she just, I don't know. It's kind of hard to talk about because I've kind of gone through something like that. Um, but they don't have a very good relationship. And I talked to my grandma about that, and I was like, wow, I didn't know that. And the topic of conversation came up before, at Thanksgiving, when I was figuring out who to interview. And I didn't tell any of my family yet, but then I started hearing my grandma talk about Aunt Susie and how she's moving into my great grandma's house because she owns the house. But my great grandma is like not happy about that because they don't have a good relationship. Um, and then I interviewed Aunt Susie, and she told me basically what my grandma said, but she gave me a little more insight that I probably shouldn't really disclose, um, a lot of the personal things. Um, but it sucks because a lot of stuff, what she did tell me was a lot of stuff back then you were able to get away with because it's back then and we've grown, and being a child now obviously is not so much easier, but it's so much less accepted to abuse your children because people would hit their children in school or spank them with a belt to discipline them. And there was this one time which um my Aunt Susie broke something of her mom's, my grandma Great's, and my great grandma took her out to the backyard and beat her with a belt. So, yeah, it was really tough interviewing my Aunt Susie, and I didn't want to interview my great grandma because, you know, um, it was really tough interviewing her, but I'm glad I did because now I know more about her, and I love her because she's family. But, you know, it kind of sucks hearing about that kind of stuff, and how back then it was more acceptable, but now, obviously, we all recognize it as abuse. And I'm glad that she is able to accept that. Obviously, not accept, actually, but you know what I mean. Um, and that she's going to be able to get her house back, because that's her house. So, yeah, that was my interview process. It wasn't fun, but it was interesting, and I'm glad I got more info, and I got to know my family better, because I don't really talk to them. Sorry. And the only time I see them is at, like, Thanksgiving. So, yeah. I'm glad I got to interview them and everyone involved. So, thanks for watching.